Good morning, hockey fans. This is Stephen Heisler with JuniorHockey.io, Notorious Hockey Company, the wild and crazy junior hockey discussion group on Facebook. You are watching the Junior Hockey Morning Show. We are on the World Sports Broadcasting Network, WSBN.TV, Facebook, X, YouTube. Tommy, no mistakes this morning. All right, I've been kind of sick all week, so I brought in Michael Moore to help me today. He's been kind of sick all week, so I guarantee you by watching this show, you're not going to catch this sickness. Tommy might get it. My wife gave it to me, so we'll see what happens. Dudley coughing up lum biscuits yet there, Mike?
No, not quite yet. He's kind of just conked out on the floor right now. But if you say his name enough times, he'll probably jump up and insist that he gets on the screen here. So maybe we'll get lucky, right, buddy?
We tried that with Tiana a few times, and she just doesn't like not having my undivided attention. So when I'm working, she's okay. But if I'm apparently doing something else or a conversation, she has to be involved no matter what. So, Mike
he's actually exceptional with work. If we're talking to a player or a player's family or a coach or something like that, and I got it on the speakerphone, he's as good as can be. But the minute it hangs up, he understands what that means, and he's in my lap. So we got it worked out. So hopefully you'll get to that point too. But
if he jumps my lap at 80 pounds, I'll be in big trouble. I'm going to lose something. So. So last week, the NCAA voted, I think it was last Tuesday or Wednesday, on Wednesday after the election, the coaches voted to allow the players from the Canadian Hockey League to now be eligible for NCAA Division I hockey starting this fall for the 25-26 season. And there's a lot of
time, right?
It's about time. We've been on this for a couple of years. We've been talking about it for at least a year and a half. I've been called probably every name in the book for saying this is going to happen. I don't know what I'm talking about. But, again, I'm used to that. That doesn't bother me. But what does bother me is all the misinformation. I feel like I'm not a Democrat. Don't take it the wrong way. But there's a lot of speculation and misinformation about what this really means to today's hockey player. And, Mike, your article really pushed a few buttons because it's right. Here's where it comes down to. We have players in Wenatchee that are both on this. They're on the Canadian Sports School Hockey League Academy team, and they get to be right alongside the kids in the Western Hockey League. And, Mike, I can tell you player for player, if you ask one of our clients that are there, why is that player in the Western Hockey League and you are not? And player for player is going to tell you those kids work and compete at an entirely different level. And the problem is, Tiana's here, is that American kids, and not just, I would say tier 2 prospects in general, right? The issue is clear. They don't work with the same intensity, probably because hockey's never been that intense for them. American prospects don't have the same amount of ice time as they do in Canada. And, American prospects that are playing in the Western League and Ontario League, they get up there at age 15 and they realize what kind of work it's going to take to play at that level. So you open that door with your talent. You stay in the room with your work ethic. And Mike, the misconception recently is that those kids are all dumb. They're not all going to go to college because they don't really go to school. They're not that smart. That's a very big misconception. That's a huge mistake to think that about those.
Absolutely.
We know hockey parents.
No, there's some very intelligent players. Yeah, there's some very intelligent. I mean, you and I know this because we work with hockey players day in and day out. And it's one of our, basics that we look for in a player. We want them to, to obviously have that sense of accountability, that character, but, to have the educational wherewithal to take themselves somewhere in the future. And, I've never really seen that break down just because we're across the border. It is, I think parents still find value in raising their children that way. They want them to be smart. They know, even though their kid may be a hotshot, maybe a prospect, in the CHL, that hockey does end one day. And, our sport is fortunate enough that we have a lot of intelligent players within it. And that gets passed down from generation to generation. So now, they've got the access to go to a whole new set of academics after, the CHL play is done and over with. Before, they were limited to just youth sports. Well, those are colleges as well, and there's some really good schools in Canada. So it's not just anybody who can tie up a skate all of a sudden is going to get into to Harvard to play next year. That's not the way it is. These kids are smart, they are intelligent, and I think you're going to see a lot of that carry with them as this change starts to unfold.
Absolutely, and we're seeing some of the repercussions of the inevitable, right? So we know that with that many players coming out of the Canadian Hockey League, it's going to have an instant impact on Division One. Well, in the past, 8 years, if you're a North American Hockey League prospect and you make it to Division One, every single time a new USHL or BCHL player came into the room, you had to fight for your stall. We've had that problem with some of our clients. And unless they're in the top third of the roster in the scoring line, they're in a battle for their stall year after year while being there. Those kids' opportunities now will be very few and far between. Let's be realistic. Outside of the three major junior leagues and the USHL and maybe the top third of the BCHL, that's going to be the kids going Division One. And a lot of those kids will be going D3. That's all there is to it. So it's going to push the whole level down a spot where I think the EHL is probably the league that's in the most trouble. They built their whole brand around setting kids to D3. I think they're already losing teams to the USPHL. I really don't see how they remain relevant in the new year. Mike, it's hard for any pay-to-play team to exist in these conditions. But we know this. In order to play college hockey at D3 for sure, at ACHA D1 now for sure, and most of D2, you better have played junior hockey somewhere. You're going to see some NAHL level players fall down to the D2 level. So if you think that you're going to come out of high school or youth hockey and crash a D2 opportunity at ACHA D2, that's not going to happen. Those opportunities will be few and far between. And Mike, we've seen this
one
before.
Of the things I've noticed one of the things I've noticed with college hockey players, a lot of times you'll see a lot of fight and tenacity out of those kids that come up from the NA. Why? Because just for exactly why you're saying, they're being challenged. And I think for the first time, the BC kids and the USHL kids are now going to be challenged for their spots. One of the things that I've noticed watching college, and I watch a lot of college hockey, but one of the things I have noticed is that there's a bit of a drop-off when you get these USHL players in. The level of compete is lower. By the time they make it to the U, they all have a good sense that they're going to be on their team, that they're going to be playing, they're going to be skating. All of that is up in the air now. All of it. Now you got OHL guys coming in, WHL guys coming in, ready to take your spot. So what I'm hoping to see out of some of this is to see that level of tenacity, some of that grit, from the BCHL players and the USHL players inside the NCAA. I can't wait to see that kind of get spun up and really drive the game forward. And I think that's going to be very exciting to watch. But at the same rate, right now, we're still sort of figuring things out. A lot of changes are happening every day. It's something different. So it'll be interesting to see how this all kind of comes together the next year. Obviously, next year is going to kind of be it's going to be a dry run. There's going to be a lot of mistakes. There's going to be a lot of good things to come out of it. But that's one of the things I'm definitely looking forward to.
People are writing off leagues like the BCHL. I think that's a big mistake. I think the BCHL in this new atmosphere becomes a little bit older and a lot more Europeans. Europeans aren't going to be going to the Canadian Hockey League as much. And I think you'll see a lot more players off World Juniors that are not on the U.S. or Canadian team or Russian team, maybe even a Swedish team, start to make their way to BC. And that's really going to be a melting pot of a league, I think, in the future. The North American Hockey League may get a lot older. The BCHL now has decided, as a response to this, to go unlimited 20-year-olds for 25, 26. That'll be an older league. The NAHL is going to be an older league, kind of a last resort for a lot of 20-year-olds, and that may be a smart move for them. What happens to pay-to-play hockey? And we're hearing we expect the USPHL to announce their new version of a non-sanctioned AAA at 16s and 17s. That should shake things up a little bit on the U.S. side and even Canadian side to some extent. And I don't think we're going to have as many junior teams operating at the pay-to-play level. I would not be surprised to see a cut of maybe a third of those teams over the next 5 years, maybe less. So, Mike, we're in for a hell of a ride. We're in the middle of this thing.
Yeah.
But as a player or as a parent, especially if you're at 2005, 2006, you've already suffered through COVID and the 5 years of eligibility at NCAA, and now you get this new bomb dropped on you. It doesn't mean the end of the road. So, Mike, there's kids. A lot of kids are
upset. It definitely should.
And there's kids that were committed to play. They're no longer committed to go D1. They lost that, and I understand why. The smaller schools at Division I are very excited to be able to bring in a lot of Canadian Hockey League players with their scholarship money. It really becomes a bit of an equalizer where Michigans and Wisconsins and Minnesotas don't really have that advantage, over the Mankato states and everybody else. So I'm excited for what it does to college hockey. I think it's going to grow, and I think it's going to mean ultimately more opportunities for kids all the way down the line. Mike?
I think so too. I think we're going to see a lot of things happening here, in the course of the next year. Like I said, there is no roadmap in place for this. This is all uncharted territory for every single entity involved. So how this all shakes out in the end will be very interesting. We just saw AIC earlier, I think it was today or yesterday. They announced that they were moving from D1 to D2, and we'll probably see a lot of shuffling just like that to come. I expect that the level of play at the ACHA D1 will probably pick up as a result, just because of how everything sort of trickles down. It's going to be the domino effect, from the top to the bottom. So we'll see that level of play go up. And now schools have more potential from both the NIL initiatives, so paying the players for one thing, and then also with how they've restructured how scholarships are going to work as well. So I think it's just going to be a different feel, I think. And like I said, everybody's sort of figuring things out. One of the biggest issues that I'm starting to see already is the universities, they don't actually have an infrastructure quite ready in place just yet, to watch all these kids in the O or in the Q, it's just not there yet. All of their budget's been planned out for the year. They're going to USHL events, scouting those kids out, but now they got to start looking at everybody in the CHL. So they've got to do some fundamental changes in the background just to, try and make it work for themselves. So there's going to be a lot of changes along the way. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
If you are a player and you're going through this transition and you want to have a conversation, on the bottom of tonight's or last night's article, you'll see a link to Victorious Hockey. You can book a call with us. We'll be happy to talk to you. But until Monday, I hope that you have a great weekend in hockey and enjoy your coffee. That was backwards again.